So what are maybe the first criterias what you're looking for in a producer?
I think I mean it's a little bit like speed dating in a way. Like you kind of know if you want to deal with this person in perpetuity. You know, there's a certain level of like, is this a good person? And you know, where's their kind of moral and political compass does matter, because especially once you start dealing with money and everything else, you kind of want to fall back on that foundation. But I would say that other than that, I think one of the largest concerns for me has been the farming. Obviously now, you know, obviously the between natural wine and regenerative soil, all these things I think is ultimately more important than say some of the maybe the small bits in the cellar. You know, I'm not such a dogmatic person about total sulfur or that kind of thing, but getting you know, really healthy land and practices would be the first place to start. So once you kind of can establish that the farming is up to par, or at least heading in that direction, you know, maybe there's investments being made. And then yeah, I do seek out mostly native grapes,
Mm-hmm.
or at least native adjacent. You know, I'm not looking for, I know that, for instance, like in Villian, they make obviously great Cabernet Franc,
Mm.
and they do, but that's not really what sways me. I'd much rather find like a good like Portugueser or something from that area. So yeah, so good farming, good people, native grapes, and obviously we're looking for native or spontaneous fermentation, wines that are unfiltered, wines that, you know, show something special about the area.
Hmm.
Um,
And
like for instance, like
can I
I'm
just yeah?
you go ahead.
No, sorry, because there's so much questions it raised in my hand, because I'm also looking for these wines as a sommelier, kind of.
Yeah.
So you said farming practices. That means that a producer should be at least organic, or at least go towards these measures, or
Yeah, ideally, I don't show up demanding the certificates,
mm-hmm.
um, and whether it's organic or biodynamic is not particular. And again, there are producers I work with where they're, you know, they've had the land. They might have 2.5 hectares. They do everything by hand, and you know, they may want to. They need to make the wine and sell the wine to keep afloat financially.
Mm.
So they do want to maintain an era, like say there's a really horrible, drastic vintage. Do they want the kind of whole in case of emergency idea to use a certain kind of spraying against a penuspora or something like that? But it's so, and then and in that sense, they can't get the organic certification, or they don't want to go through the processes or pay the money. So there are weird exceptions. And obviously you can show up to a vineyard. Like if you show up in spring and there's heavy cover crops, the birds and bugs are buzzing. They have healthy fermentations. You see the kids, you know,
Mm-hmm.
running in the vineyards and eating the grapes. You know, you can,
That's a proof.
unless they're wildly irresponsible people, you can rest assured that they're not farming in an irresponsible way. But yeah, I think more and more people in Hungary are pushing for organic certification, and I also am pushing for it. I'm telling producers, you know, I will buy more. I will do more with you if you can lock this down. But again, there are different, you know, each situation is kind of unique. You know, like there's some really small, wonderful families I work with where I know that jumping through all those bureaucratic hoops is difficult. And also they might not have someone to help them. And I think what's great to see in Hungary is that some producers are now reaching out to help other producers do such a thing. And I think the more that can happen is a really strong play for Hungary. I mean, there was talk at one point of, you know, entire appellations being organic, you know. So I think Hungary has that capacity, and it is mostly that way. But it would be nice in terms of people who doubt more, who can't travel, or who can't see, to just be able to say, yes, they're certified organic. It's done.
Mm. And the other thing is like spontaneous fermentation, because that's also for me maybe in the last year or in the last years, some kind of yeah, like a focal point, you know, like I kind of feel that in a wine that it was like let it be, you know, from the
Yeah.
vineyard. Like it's really, it's a character. It's not a made wine, so to say, but it speaks the place, it speaks the producer, it speaks the bacteria, and it also, it my kind of, my body feels it. It's somehow, it's, yeah, maybe it's a bit funny,
Yeah.
but it's somehow more unique, and it's more natural to my body.
And it's
And
also, if you are not farming in such a way that you have a healthy yeast population on the grapes, then you can't achieve that. So in some
true.
ways, having a really strong, robust native fermentation also tells me a little bit about the farming. And again, I know there's a lot of ambient yeast in cellars, and as you know, in Hungary, you walk into a deep old, cellar in Tokaj or Eger or Matra, and it's covered in 3 feet of mold. Yeah, there's probably some bacteria in there that are contributing to the wine. But I also feel like, well, then bring it on. Let that be the one that dominates the fermentation. You can. I would rather have that than have something push through it. And also, as you know, in Hungary, some of my favorite wines are the wines that have botrytis that it also somehow fermented dry. And a lot of commercial yeast can't even do that. You need to have this, old cellar someplace and a long, slow élevage to push these wines all the way through. And that makes them incredibly unique.
True.
So, yeah, so I think that the farming is absolutely central. And I feel like the conversation is going to go more that direction going forward. And again, there's already, there's a lot of people that complain here in California and elsewhere that, people, oh, I made a 0-0 XYZ, but they bought it from a commercial vineyard, which is more kind of important in the big picture. I'd much rather have a wine that has 30 parts sulfur that comes from an organic vineyard. Or in some cases in Hungary, we're finding vineyards that have never been farmed industrially. So you don't even have the latent levels of chemical in the soil that you might find in, places that had really heavy industrial farming, whether it be, Champagne or the Rhone Valley or Burgundy or wherever. Like, while they've transitioned successfully, there's a lot of trapped stuff in that soil. And I think Hungary is lucky where there's still some places that were deemed unfit for industrial production for a variety of reasons, or building back up the terraces into the forest that weren't sufficient for the Soviet era co-op tanks, So there's so much potential in Hungary if they would just kind of, I don't know, embrace it. And I do think there's a little bit of lack of support from the government. I think they could really step it up and help people. I mean, a few of the producers that we have only really gone organic because neighbors in the appellation helped them do it, who had already been through it. And that's just not it's a good kind of grassroots way to go about it, but it's not a great way countrywide to go about making these changes.
Yeah, true. Let it be. I mean, I'm all for these vines.